and welcome back to another episode of JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Laced Up Barbershop in Somerset, Kentucky. Hit them up for all of your haircut needs. You can find them on Facebook at Laced Up Barbershop, or if you're in Somerset, they are located right across from Reno's. You'll see a big sign that says Barbershop. Go in and hit them up for all your haircut needs. They do a great job every time I'm in there. And shout out to David Miller and those guys at the barbershop and all they do. So I just want to thank them for everything they do. They also take in walk-ins, or you can book an appointment with David. Either way, I highly recommend those guys. Before I start breaking down the details of the race, just wanted to say, if you all haven't been to the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte, if you're a NASCAR fan, I highly recommend that. Such a great experience for me and my son, who also loves NASCAR. It was awesome. So many exhibits and tours you can take, and racing simulators, and just if you're a NASCAR fan, you've got to go check it out. Hopefully next year we can go back to the team shops and tour those. We didn't get a chance to do that this time, but I'm just going to shout out the NASCAR Hall of Fame. You know, it's a NASCAR fan's paradise pretty much. Anything you want to find there, history-wise, they've got cars you can look at, fire suits. It takes you. There's a place upstairs there that takes you through the history of NASCAR and exhibits and cars that have won races and stuff. It's just an awesome experience for the family, or you know, even friends. Also, you could go if you're a big NASCAR fan. So shout out to NASCAR Hall of Fame. I'll definitely be back. We enjoyed our experience there, and it was a great time. Now on to a crazy weekend in Charlotte. As you all know, weather delayed all the action until Monday, which was crazy. Being down there and growing up in Charlotte for a couple of years, I would say is the wildest weather I've ever seen at this time of the year. It was like 50 and raining the whole weekend, but there's finally a break in the rain on Monday, and they got the race in, and man, was it worth the wait. It was a great race with the next gen car, just like last year. Um, so a lot of the crowd stuck around. I guess since it was Memorial Day, a lot of people could. A great crowd, great atmosphere, and an even crazier race. So let's just dive right into it. My first thought, being there in person once the race started, was how bad Stewart-Haas was as an organization at the beginning. Kevin Harvick started second. I think he was almost out of the top 25 first pit stops. I mean, his car was so loose. He couldn't do anything about it. And Chase Briscoe actually got passed by B.J. McLeod in the first run. So, I mean, Almirola was bad at the beginning also. Priest was probably the best one out of all of them. But I don't know what has happened to Stewart-Haas. But this year, and Harvick has been their main guy, their savior, if you will. I mean, he's doing good. He's in top 5 in points still, but as an organization, man, they have fell off significantly. It's hard to see anyone but Harvick there winning this year. And I'm not even sure Harvick will. I think just because it's his last year, I could see him winning one race. But man, they were terrible at the beginning. So hopefully they can figure out what is going on there. Maybe make a few changes and improve on it. But usually Ford in general this year had been bad. But of course, Blaney had a great race. But Stewart-Haas was terrible at the beginning. And about 20 to 30 laps in, there at the very beginning of the race, you started to see Christopher Bell's car come to life. He was in the lead before the first set of pit stops there. And Definitely, I thought had the best long run car at the beginning of the race. It sure seemed like, I mean, he was flying past everybody. Denny had the lead within the first 10 to 15 laps, and then Seabell just took it from him pretty quickly. And before Seabell had his incidents, it looked like the best long run car. Um, about lap 75, Jimmy Johnson spins by himself. Um, Not a good start. The last two races that he's done for his own Legacy Motor Club there has not went well at all. And I honestly, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I hate to see that. I hate to see his legacy, if you will, be impacted by coming back and absolutely stinking it up. And I hate to say it about a seven-time champion, but I think it might be time to just go back to the owner's side and stay there. I just it's tough to watch. It has been these last two races, and then he ran pretty well in the Daytona 500, but then got taken out by a wreck at the end. But I guess when you're a seven-time champion, you can do what you want. And but I hate to see it for him. He was so dominant in his years that he raced for Hendrick, and to come back and less equipment, especially this year, um, it's been tough to watch, and I hate it for Jimmy, and I hate it for Legacy MC, which also we'll talk about later was was the whole Legacy MC team had a very strange weekend. While I'm talking about Legacy MC, I might as well mention this since, I mean, I'm not going to talk about them much else since they did this here this week, but I've never seen all three cars from the same team go to the garage at the same time for the same issue. That was so strange. I think Eric Jones and Noah Gregson both had radiator issues. They took both of their cars back to the same time, back to the garage at the same time there after Jimmy had wrecked. Um, so he then went back, but I thought that was very strange. I didn't know what was going on there, but then you see all three of them eventually came back on track, but I think Jones was the only one running at the very end of the race. But I just wanted to touch on that and thought it was pretty wild to see that in person, and I'm sure it was wild for the people on TV when they showed all three cars coming back to the garage at the same time, pulled from the race. It's pretty wild. William Byron took stage one from Christopher Bell by about an inch. Um, I think it was another 20 to 30 lap run there, and Seabell's car was just getting going, and he ended up passing two or three cars in the last couple laps of stage one and almost took the stage. But William Byron took the stage, and since I'm talking about him, his pit crew combined with that number one pit stall there in Charlotte were untouchable all day long. Um, if it wasn't for that, I don't think he would have been in the race because I don't think or in contention because he didn't have the speed. Hendrick altogether really didn't have the speed all weekend, which was quite shocking. But that I heard Denny talking about on his podcast yesterday that the number one pit stall at Charlotte is the biggest advantage of any track that we go to. And that's because actually at Charlotte, and I didn't realize this watching as a fan, I realized it afterwards. They don't actually score leaving pit road by the yellow line there on pit road that all other tracks do. At Charlotte, they score it by the camera at the very end of pit road. And when you have the first stall, if you're running top five, you're coming out first every time. Um, so I'm sure his pit crew obviously did what they were supposed to, but the pit stall itself is probably more to contributed more to him coming out first almost every single pit stop. I mean, it was crazy watching in person because I mean, he didn't have that much speed, but yet he was up there, even won a stage because of the pit selection. So good for Willie B and his team. They've been fast all year long. Just didn't have race winning speed this week. And then, shocker, another rainstorm comes. And normally during a rainstorm, a rain delay, you normally don't see anything happen. Well, this weekend was so wild and unpredictable. Something happened during the break of the race during the delay. Um, Bubba Wallace and Eric Almirola get into a shoving match there on pit road. Almirola claimed that Bubba flipped him the bird. So Eric wasn't going to take that, and he's going to say something to him about it. They ended up exchanging words on pit road and ended with Almirola shoving Bubba Wallace and then the security guard getting right in between them. And I couldn't tell the way the video was in pretty poor quality, so I couldn't really tell. But I saw someone on Twitter said that it looked like the same exact security guard that was in between Ross and Noah. And if that's the case, I think they got to pay that man extra. Um, he's in the middle of everything. If that really was him, that'd be crazy. But this wasn't a legit fight. It was just kind of a pushing match, but still to be there. If that's the same guy, yeah, you got to pay him extra. As much as I'd love to see them fight, obviously NASCAR doesn't want that right now. So that's pretty comical if it was him. After the pushing match, all the extracurriculars that went on during the rain delay, we finally got back racing. The delay was about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And we got back racing. The first thing that happened after the red flag was Kyle Busch spun, fighting for a top 5 position, actually. Got under someone, just spun out and collected Daniel Suarez in the wreck and pushed in Suarez's front nose of his car in, and Suarez wasn't the same since then, which also makes me a little upset because this was the first time that my prediction was way off. Suarez was running well. I said Trackhouse would be the team to beat. I didn't hear from Ross Chastain all day long, which was very shocking. He dominated this race last year, and I mean he didn't win it, but dominated most of it, and just was non-existent. Suarez was running a lot better than Chastain until the wreck. Once he got that nose damage, he was a non-factor also. But so that was pretty wild to see. And then Chris Buescher took the stage 2, and RFK continues to run well. Brad K had his incident with Todd Gilliland there at the end. It was between stage 2 and 3, but before that, both cars were in the top 10 all day long, running well. Chris Buescher, he won a stage. He led several laps before winning the stage. It wasn't like a fluke stage win. He had to earn it, and he did, and they continue to make strides in Brad's second year of co-owning the team, and I think they're just going to keep getting better and better. As I touched on a little bit earlier, Ford has had issues all year long, but this week, RFK and Penske in particular, at least with Blaney, really ran a lot better than they have been, and I think that'll continue to get better and better. But I want to shout out Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher for just continuing to make strides, and I say they'll one or the other is liable to end up in victory lane very soon. Wouldn't shock me at all. So shout out to those guys. After the Brad K and Todd Gilliland wreck in stage 2, nothing else really too crazy happened. Ryan Blaney went on to win stage 3, which he showed multiple times during the race that he had the fastest car. There at the very beginning, I touched on CBL having a good long run car, but other than that, that was really his only competition was Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell there for a little bit. And Reddick, he also hit the wall a couple times, might have impacted his car a little bit. And while we're talking about Reddick, that Tar Heel blue paint scheme looked amazing. I'm not a North Carolina Tar Heel fan by any means, but the car looked really nice, and he made a crazy save there, trying to chase down Blaney for the lead. Spun. His car was diagonal coming out of 4 there in the dog leg, and he saved it somehow. I don't know how he saved it. Saved it from going through the grass, gathered it up, didn't lose any spots out of it. And He said on the radio he changed his underwear after that one. I don't blame him. I mean, that was a great save. And while I'm on the subject of Tyler Reddick, shout out to 2311 for both cars finished top five this week. Bubba fourth, Reddick fifth. That was a good showing for them. And coming off of second and third place finishes last week in the All Star race. 2311 knocking down doors. Should see them back in victory lane fairly soon, I would think. Tyler Reddick and Kevin Harvick, they're between after stage three get together. I really couldn't tell. At first, being there, I thought it was on Reddick, but going back at the replay, I think Reddick held his line. Harvick just maybe came up into him a little too much and spun through the grass. So I hated to see Harvick's day, as far as contending for the win, be over. After that, he worked his way back up. I think he finished 11th. But just a little mistake in these cars, they can ruin your whole day. And that was an example of that. After struggling early, Harvick worked his way back up and had a good long run car, it seemed like, once it went on. And hated to see it end with a solo spin there, but glad he was able to fight his way back up almost to the top 10. And they call him a closer for the reason. He's always been good at closing out races, and so nothing's changed there. He's still Harvick. And after the Reddick and Harvick caution, as NASCAR fans all say, cautions breed cautions. And it felt like we could not stay green after that for more than 5 laps without something happening. You had Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who ran amazing all day, get into AJ Allmendinger and spin him out. Stenhouse's team there at JTG has put together a pretty solid year compared to years in the past. Of course, won the Daytona 500, and since then haven't really had a big fall off. They're running good every week, it seems like, and that's encouraging to see for them. And the Kaulig cars, AJ Allmendinger and Justin Haley both ran good, and that was good to see for them. And after that, you had another one. This time, Kyle Larson, who, my goodness, I did not expect him to struggle this weekend like he did, to be honest with you. I mean, he ran top 10, top 12 all day, but thought he would dominate the race, to be honest with you. Him or Ross Chastain, and neither one of them were remotely close to what I, in my opinion, thought was going to happen. Larson just said he didn't have the speed. His car was too slow all day long. There at night, when the sun went down, I think his car started coming to him a little more, and on one of the restarts, it looked like he just got loose and ended up taking out Ty Gibbs and wrecking into Joey Logano as well, trying to save it, trying to collected those guys. So hated to see that, but Larson will be fine. one somewhat off week ain't gonna hurt him. He's had the fastest car every week for several weeks of the season, but they struggled this weekend. So hate that for Larson, but finally, I'll touch on this a little bit earlier. Ryan Blaney wins the race and deserved to win it. I think he was the best car almost all day long. Once Christopher Bell spun there and hit the wall a couple times. And Blaney snaps a long winless streak, hadn't won since Daytona, the last race of the regular season in 2021. So big win for him. Glad for that team. They deserve it. A lot of second place finishes over that time, and it was awesome to see them get back into victory lane. And the paint scheme was sweet too. My son loved the lime green body armor paint scheme. Looked really nice. He bought a little die cast of it, but glad for Blaney. I don't really, as a fan, I don't have feelings either way for him, but I was just glad to see someone who hadn't been in victory lane in a while finally get one. And at an event as big as the Coke 600, man, it's got to make you emotional. And you can see that it really did in his post race, which was awesome to see. Guys actually showing emotion winning a race. He was in tears almost, and then for him to go up into the crowd, just like Joseph Newgarden did there at the Indy 500, was really awesome to see. And I'm sure the fans love that. That was awesome. He burned it down for sure. Good for Ryan Blaney. I could see him winning another race. Now he's locked in the playoffs. He's good. He's really good at super speedways. Um, he won his first ever race at Pocono, which we go to later in the year. So, you know, he's a good driver, and that was awesome to see. Before I start talking about what you all want to hear me talk about, I want to give a quick shout out to Ty Gibbs and Justin Haley for running both races. The Xfinity race also got rained out, and they had to push it back to after the Cup race. So those guys drove almost 900 miles in one day of NASCAR racing. That takes a lot of guts and skill, and those guys both did it. I think one of them came up 2 laps short of completing it all, and then it would have been tied because Justin Haley completed all laps. So shout out to those guys for being Iron Men of the sport, and it takes toughness. I could not imagine driving 900 miles in a single day at the speeds and that they did. Really good to see, and shout out to those guys. Now, on to the craziness of Chase Elliott and Denny. Um, I've took a couple days to collect my thoughts so I don't say anything that um, I wouldn't want anybody to hear me say. And my conclusion on this is uh, one of the most idiotic moves I've ever seen in NASCAR history, and I can't believe that's the first big, huge wreck I've ever seen in person. I was worried, to be honest. With all these safety concerns of the next gen car, he was wrecked in the worst part of the track in the freaking dog leg, head on into the wall at that speed. If you watch the in car camera view of that wreck, it's thousand wonders that he did not get injured pretty badly, and that would have been terrible. Racing wise, it's the same exact thing that happened last year with Kyle Larson and Bubba Wallace. Larson ran Bubba up into the wall. Bubba came down across the track, hooked Larson into the wall. I think, the more I've thought about it, he should have been suspended. These guys, especially at that time last year, the safety concerns were at an all-time high. You had several concussions, and that was towards the end of the year last year. They suspended Bubba, deserved suspension, and therefore NASCAR had no choice this time. Even though it's their most popular driver, they had to suspend Chase. Thank the Lord that they did, because it would have been an outrage from me and several others if they didn't. But they made the right call, ultimately. But I still want to take a second and touch on the fact that Chase Elliott completely acted like he didn't do anything wrong, and that's terrible to see, in my opinion. Chase and Denny had that run in at Martinsville and several years back, and I think they had kind of made up from that. I think they were in good circumstances with each other, from what I saw, and I think that all changed on Monday. Just a completely idiotic move on Chase's part. I get you're frustrated. I know a couple laps earlier, Denny squeezed him up. Um, he said on the radio after he squeezed him up 3 times. That still gives you no right to rear hook somebody head on into the fence at 170 miles per hour, in my opinion. And if you know what, get under Denny and push him into the wall. Do the same thing he did to you. I mean, people can say I'm biased because I'm a Denny fan and this happened to Denny. I would tell you this: if it was Ross Chastain and William Byron. If whoever right hooks somebody, they need to go home for at least a week. And that's just my opinion on it. But I think it touched a little more to me. I think it touched me a little more to talk about it just because it was Denny and seeing it live in person. How massive the impact was. I mean, you could just tell on it, just watching the race. Denny's car folded up, which is a good thing, to be honest. Means the car took the brunt of the impact, but complete senseless act. I lost a lot of respect for Chase, um, and I really don't know what else to say. I mean, you all can tell by my tone and the way I'm speaking. I've fed up with it. Um, that was a complete classless move on his part, and I honestly think that Denny's really lucky to at least not have a concussion. He said that he was seeing black stars when he went to the infield care center and didn't know how he passed his concussion test. And that's completely uncalled for. And the thing about that honestly ticks me off the most is Chase acting like that his car was messed up. Uh, you can clearly see in the SMT data his wheel was straight. The car had no. I mean, people hit the wall all day long. Like I said, Reddick hit it early, and then pounded it hard while running second also, and he kept going. He finished top five. Chase's car wasn't good all day long. I think that had part to do with it too. I'm going to agree with Denny here. I think he was throwing a tantrum, and did entirely the wrong thing by rear hooking a guy. Um, and NASCAR did the right thing. I'm gonna say it again. I'm so glad. I mean, they had to suspend him. We'll see how ratings do, but in my opinion, that don't matter. Um, I hope to never see this again by anybody. It makes you uncomfortable just sitting there watching it happen. Um, it's probably the craziest wreck I've seen live, and for it to happen to my favorite driver, I didn't have any words afterwards. We had a couple Chase Elliott fans sitting right behind us, and they were sensible about it. And they said, "Man, he's got to be suspended." He said, "I'm a fan. I'm a reasonable fan, and they are like." He said, "There's no doubt in my mind that Chase right rear hooked Denny on purpose," and that was good to hear from a Chase Elliott fan because 95% of them aren't. Uh, they don't really. I mean, Chase Elliott could do anything, and they're going to defend him. And I'm glad that at least some of them had common sense. If you're defending that move right there, you're just a Denny hater. That's number one, and number two, you don't want to see what actually happened, in my opinion, and that's going to tick some people off that's listening to this. But and I'd love to engage with you about it. If you want to talk to me about it, let's have a conversation. I'd love that. Like I said, the only good thing about this is it's all anybody's talking about, with it being Chase and Denny, so two popular guys in this sport. So uh, you all have got my opinion on it. I hated to see it. I really did, but I'm glad NASCAR made the decision to suspend Chase, and that's about all I've got on it. I don't want to say I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and it ticks me off the more times I see the replay. To be honest with you, speaking of replay, the in car Eddie DeHaan, Chase Elliott's spotter. I think he even knew that Chase screwed up because he said "oh" when he goes to hook Denny, and when he's not saying anything, he'll usually tell it like it is, and when he's not saying anything, he screwed up. So just a dumb move by. I mean, there's been multiple examples of Chase throwing fits. When Larson put him in the fence at Auto Club last year, when Larson did what he did to him was at Watkins Glen last year, and that's teammates, and he wasn't running good this weekend. I think that was frustrating him. He, immaturity, I guess, on the racetrack is what it looked like to me, and I hated to see it. But the only good thing about all this is my man Corey LaJoy's finally going to get a shot with a good ride. LaJoy will go into the 9 this weekend at Gateway. I hope for a top 10, top 5. Man, it would be awesome if he could get a win. I would love to see that. He deserves it. He's had crappy rides as long as he's been in Cup. And I think he's got the talent to really show out this weekend, and I hope he does. And speaking of people being back, Alex Bowman, man, he to come back from a broken back and run 600 miles, you got to shout him out. He ended up finishing 12th, I think. Thought he had more, needed it to go green, and for a while he had a good long run car, it seemed like, and he passed several people all day long watching him. He was flying through the field when he was towards the back end, and if it went green a while, I think you could have seen him definitely in the top 10, maybe top 5. But shout out to him. I think he'll run good this weekend also. And I really don't know who expect to win this race. I'll go ahead and put my team to beat as I'm gonna go Hendrick just because. I mean they're fast every week, obviously, but I really think LaJoy will run well. You got Larson and Byron and Bowman, of course, too, that will run good. But I'm looking at LaJoy as a guy that I know that Chase didn't run well last year at Gateway, but I think LaJoy definitely could. And I think I was a guy at the beginning of the year that thought Bowman would have at least 2 wins this year. I know he was out for injury. I still think he can get 1 or 2. To be honest with you, he's run good. He's been out several races, had a 60-point penalty, and he's still back in the playoff picture. He is in the playoffs as of now. That shows how good he's ran all year long. So I'm going to go Hendrick, my team to beat this week. I've now thought about it, and this guy went to victory lane earlier this year at Bristol Dirt and won at Martinsville last year. I think Gateway is, a similar track to Martinsville, and I think Gateway. Speaking of Gateway, I think they'll put on a great race this weekend. They did last year. It was the anniversary of Ross and Denny's first get together when Ross wrecked Denny. So I think Gateway will be a good race, and I'm going to take Christopher Bell to win, get his second victory of the season, put himself. Honestly, he could have the points lead after this week. So we'll see. I'm going to pick C-Bell to get it done at Gateway. And now for my question of the week. I had someone send me in. Would you recommend Charlotte as a place to go to watch a race? And the easy answer is yes. So many things to do. We checked out an indoor go-kart track there. They got the team shops. They got NASCAR Hall of Fame. They got tons of things for you to do. Even during the rain delay, we were never bored. There's always things to do. Shops to go to if you're into getting NASCAR diecasts like me and my son. Tons of places to do that. Of course, you got Lionel Racing there in Concord Mills Mall that has everything. They're the main supplier of cars and diecasts, so definitely yes. And just racing wise too, great race. Which makes me want to touch on. I think it's time, with this next gen car, let's just go ahead and scrap the Roval. And bring regular Charlotte back twice a year. That's my opinion. I know some drivers like it, some drivers don't. This next gen car puts on a heck of a show there at Charlotte, and it's proved it 2 years in a row. So I'm advocating for a little change next year. Let's scrap the Roval and bring back Charlotte twice a year. So yes, it's a great place to watch it. If they bring back the regular mile and a half 2 times, I could see myself going there 2 times a year from here on out. It's that awesome. Definitely in my top 5 tracks, maybe top 3. So short answer is yes. Go to Charlotte. Go have a great time. And thank you all for listening to this episode of JD's NASCAR and Sport Podcast. I want to shout out to the people that viewed my page just from wearing the shirts there at NASCAR Hall of Fame. Had a lot of views. Hopefully to expand the audience, and that was the goal. So thank you all. Hopefully you listen to this episode and enjoy it. I just want to thank everyone once again for listening. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe on Apple and Spotify, and see where this thing goes. It's already doing better than I ever expected, but we'll keep climbing mountains and hopefully get bigger to where maybe I can make this a career in the future. We'll just have to see. It's all God's plan, but that's definitely a goal of mine, and we'll see where it goes. And until next week, until after Gateway, thank you all, and appreciate every single one of you all. So thank you, and have a good week.